Regarding the British market, the question that I have a little bit provocative for you is, how did you fall in love with port, Godfrey Spence?
Oh, I don't know. How does one ever fall in love with anything? It just
On a
happens.
try and error?
I honestly don't know. And I've always liked port. I don't come from a wine trade background at all. My mother was a teacher. My father was an industrial chemist. So we're not, some people have been in the wine trade for 7 generations or whatever, and obviously will like port and Burgundy and all those. So the honest answer is I don't know.
There was a wine culture in your family?
Not particularly, no. Growing up where I did and when I did, yeah, wine.
So only beers and pubs.
We didn't even have pubs where I grew up.
Okay. moving on.
It's a long time ago and a long way away. Because I didn't grow up in the UK, so it's.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. Yeah. How do you I thought I had this idea, well, when I got into the business, that the UK market was ruby ports and Christmas. These two things were absolutely crucial for selling wines in the UK. 20 years later, I would love to say, yeah, we are a little bit more deseasonalized. We don't need to trust that much into Christmas or into ruby ports. But I'm not sure if I would get it right if I would say that. Do you still feel the market? It's still pretty much based on these two perspectives, on these two pillars?
Unfortunately, I have to say, yes, it's very much.
Please.
Yeah,
please.
I mean, I want to, and I have been talking about port for years. I want people to drink port more often. But yeah, it's one of those things, like certain liqueurs as well. People will buy a bottle at Christmas, and they might not buy another bottle the whole of the rest of the year, which is a shame, because they buy it because they enjoy it, but then somehow they don't
stop enjoying it on the January the 1st on New Year's.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, you have champagne in January, and then that's it. Well, then of course you have dry January, because you do. And nobody buys, I don't know, Cointreau in the summer. Yeah. They buy that at Christmas as well, or Grand Marnier, and it's one thing with other drinks that have, do have an advantage over port, in that sense, that people will buy white wines, red wines, gin. Obviously, gin is a summer thing. Yeah. But port is unfortunately, it is still very much seen as this is what you drink.
Do you feel that the companies have the opportunity with tonies and probably white ports in summer, if they would probably emphasize a little bit more on marketing or something?
Yeah, I actually think it's a good thing that we now have port and tonic in a can. I know it seems like an odd idea, but it's introducing people to the idea of white port and tonic anyway, which is, I know it's been around for a long time, but it hasn't been a big thing in the UK. It's been a big thing in the port industry, but And I know within the wine trade, since Sue Glasgow was doing the PR for the Port Wine Institute, which was, again, a few years ago, Port Tonic was the thing, but it never really took off. But now you can buy them.
The can would be easier to bring to a park, into a picnic, or even just to enjoy it at the end of the day, for instance, during summer.
The can is convenient, but also it introduces the concept.
Yeah.
Whereas we've been drinking, let's say, gin and tonics in the UK for forever. Well, many, many, many years. But now you can get a gin and tonic in a can. So that's going the other way. You've got an established drink which is now readily available. Now people are going to start thinking, well, hang on, Port and tonic, maybe you should try that at home. Yeah. And Tories in the summer. The silly question is why not?
Tonies have two ways. We can try to, if of course there is so many crust on rubies and Christmas that we probably could aim to promote other styles of port outside Christmas, not cannibalizing the market that we have there. Okay. At the end of the day, as we are now seeing, we also have the white ports and the canned port and tonics. Do you feel that, because tonics also have one other feature, could be the dessert drink approach in restaurants, sommeliers, in the on-trade, off-trade. But
absolutely.
And probably white could be the missing link to pick and to get the younger consumer. I wouldn't say very young, of course. That's not what we're aiming. The adolescents but a younger generation that already appreciates alcohol and appreciates and drinks in moderation, and we could get it from the port and tonic, and leave probably the tonics to restaurant service. I don't know. Trying to potential all the categories and styles of wine that we have.
The great advantage with things like LBV and Tawny, and when I say LBV, I mean the big brands of LBV, the filtered, fine filtered, cleaned up LBVs, is that you can have them open for a few days. Times. So if you're in a restaurant, you don't have to worry about drinking it up. Whereas if you've got an old vintage, if you decant your bottle of, I don't know, 1970, whatever, it's going to fade.
Yeah.
Fairly quickly. If you're only to sell in a restaurant, if you're only going to sell one glass a week, then by the time you've got to the end of the bottle, it's probably faded. Whereas the LBVs and Tawnies, I mean, Tawny is oxidized anyway, so it's not going to change that much.
So there is also a challenge from the trade trying to educate the prescriptors, sommeliers, and staff, and that could for them to propose tonics in restaurants or on the meals, right? I think it could be a good solution.
Yeah, it's education. It's always that, and
it's true.
I do some work with a retailer. I think it's a spirits retailer rather than a wine retailer, but their knowledge, the staff's knowledge of spirits is fantastic. The staff's knowledge of wine is
so
could be improved. could be improved, shall we say? Yes.
It has potential to improve.
It's certainly got potential, yes. And within wine, the staff's knowledge of fortified wine is, the small section of a small section of a small section.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people who are dealing with your final consumer. They're people dealing with your customers.
I think we can. You are completely right. We can look back a little bit and see that actually there is the idea that port doesn't innovate, but actually port innovates a lot, not only on packaging. I remember the Optimas when they were bottled on transparent glass in order to emphasize the color of the wine, and now in the same group, Grams is also doing that. You have the port and tonic. You have so actually the whole packaging that got a lot of modern from all companies. But it's interesting to see that there is probably another the missing link is to trying to get more consumers with all the vicissitudes that exist today on the moderate consumption, on the nightlife, on alcohol, on calories, everything. We are playing against the odds. Nevertheless, it's interesting to see that education at the end also makes a difference towards making the product more approachable. So I think what we have to do is educate and communicate, probably.
Absolutely, yes, and back to packaging, and with the Optima, that was amazing because it went from a very traditional port bottle, bulbous neck and dark glass and so on, into this stylish product, which at the time was just under £10 for a 10-year-old port, which was also convenient. It was, and then of course the, as you say, the other company, Graham's with their age tawnies were aiming, and Paul said this to me, aiming at the whiskey market.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of whiskey comes in those slightly dumpy, slightly heavy bottles, but you can see the product inside.
Exactly.
And that was what they were aiming at. Other people have stuck to their traditional bottling, but that's fine because that's the way they're working. But
the advantage of the transparent glass is exactly that, to bring to be able to bring people fall in love with the color of what they may experience, and also to make the change of the ruby against the tawny color.
Yes,
that's very interesting. Yeah, and now they are doing the same with the white port. They call it number 5, if I'm not wrong, and it's a white glass full of botanicals
bottle,
on.
Yes.
Yeah, full of botanicals in the label. So go wonder where the market should go. But I think it's a clever idea to bring ideas and to try to put the consumer to mix ideas. One final question: what do you see in the future for port in the UK? A little bit of what we've said right now, education and
more education, please. And I think port is lucky, skillful, you can choose your word, compared to sherry, which is obviously its other, the other great volume of fortified wine in the UK. I mean, obviously it's Madeira and so on, Masala, etc. But port sales are and have been pretty steady. Ups and downs, but fairly steady, whereas
Yeah.
sherry has been plummeting for years. What's good about port as well is that you've changed as a whole category. It used to be fine ruby, fine tawny, fine white, and vintage. Now
One here and one here. Nothing in between.
Precisely. Not a lot in between. And we are now, I think, and you can confirm this or deny it, but predominantly a special categories market.
It's true.
Rather than the fine ruby market. So, whilst volume isn't going up, at least the value is sort of relatively stable.
It's a very good point. Actually, that's what's happening. The average price is increasing, steadily increasing, but it's true. You are completely right. Probably one of the paths to be walked into the UK market and in ports in general throughout the world is aiming to increase the average price by putting people consuming better products, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there are still far too many cheap ports on the market. I don't understand how people can possibly make any money on fine rubies. I mean, I've seen the I've seen the terrain. I've seen the winemaking. You're not a.
It's a question that we are
cheap
all
and
putting.
cheerful area.
No.
Yeah. Dare I ask how much you can? No, I won't ask.
Well, no. You are completely right, and we also put that question. Of course, that's for those who say that Port Wine Institute controls so many stuff. If we would even control price, they would kill ourselves in the middle of the Douro for sure. So I think we should go with a question from David Camuso, in which he agreed with us, saying education is absolutely right, but what about advertisements on TV or newspapers? It's also being done, especially by brands. So we agree that the trade have not an agreement, but we coordinate the communication, the generic communication from the IVDP and the ruling body with the brands. And actually, what you see most of the time in advertising and newspapers and ads and sometimes TV or other social media right now is focusing on branding. Although in the side of IVDP, we have the responsibility to educate throughout a generic approach, as we were doing today, speaking about categories. Sometimes, of course, we can refer brands, but our main goal is to give information, to give education, to put people to understand better in order to buy better or sell better. And we leave, of course, we can do generic promotional campaigns, and we will do it in the near future. But I think the main goal for advertising and newspapers and social media right now that cannot be ignored is branding. The Port and Tonic cans, the Christmas approach that we will have pretty soon. I think they should be done by the brands themselves. Then a generic approach to just this Christmas drink port wine. That this wouldn't make a big impact instead of drink Sandman or drink Grams or drink Taylors or drink Offley or something or Coburn's. So I think that's the please to finish.
Yeah, I I've seen some adverts on the London Underground, for example, poster adverts. I mean, that was 2 or 3 years ago now.
For
For
Porto or for Mateus Rosé? I remember for Mateus it was a big.
no, Graham's
Okay.
specifically. Graham's Port for advertising on the tube. But television adverts in the UK are very expensive, and the last time I remember adverts on television were, back in the 80s, and Coburns and Sandeman were both advertising,
Hmm.
but they were the big brands in the UK at the time. That's where you saw. You went into any off license, any bottle store in the UK, and they would have either Coburns or Sandeman
Sandman.
or both, but probably just Ruby, Tawny, White. But yeah, they, they
From those
were
brands.
they were advertised on telly. Um, Trying to think if I recall any other. I mean, Taylor's LBV, I'm sure must have been advertised. Otherwise, why would it be so successful? But I don't recall seeing television adverts for it.
Yeah.
Press adverts, yes, but not.
Press, yes, I agree with you. I agree. They
Yeah.
were most focused on press. So Godfrey, I don't know, but oh, you went away.
Hello, Paulo. Yes, you. It looked like you went to sleep for a minute.
Hear you. So we'll say goodbye. Yeah, here you are.
We're back. Yes,
Before we leave again, I would say thank you very much for coming.
my pleasure.
Thank you very much for being here with us and talking and chatting a little bit more about wine and port wine. And I hope to see you soon in Porto. If not, I will go to London.
Or in
But
London,
thank
whichever.
you
Yes.
anyway, and
Great.
thank you, and
Thanks
see you
very much,
soon.
Paulo. Speak soon. Bye.